Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. The sideline reporter is a part of the broadcast that, for many fans, is often overlooked. They're only on screen for a few seconds over the course of the contest, showing up at the start of the game and at halftime, as well as occasionally throughout random points in the game to provide injury updates and whatnot. But a great sideline reporter can make or break a broadcast. Cutting down to the field, preparing a 30-second script on the fly with no notes in your hand, thinking what the best story is to say depending on how the game is going, speaking clearly and essentially a memorized monologue, and providing information pivotal to the contest is not as easy as it looks. Trust me, you either know what you're doing and make it sound effortless and provide insight, or...
And here he is, having the time of his life.
Yeah, that happens. And throughout the years, one of the best and most professional in the business has been none other than this woman right here, Pam Oliver. Over the last 30 years, she's established herself as one of the most prolific sideline reporters in the sport. And it's not hard to see why. She handles tricky subjects with grace and class. She goes well beyond the surface level when providing reports like so many do. She does a great job interviewing people and enhancing the broadcast, and she has been a staple of Fox's coverage of the NFL for just about every season, whether it's as the #1 sideline reporter or as the #2 reporter, which is what she's been for roughly the past decade, ever since Erin Andrews joined the company. But during the 2001 season, Oliver was on incredibly thin ice from the NFL and from the Chicago Bears, because she broke one of the cardinal sins of being a sideline reporter for the Shield. And before I go any further or tease any more, no, she didn't lie or make something up a la Reggie Rucker doing color commentary back in 1984, in an incident that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But she did do something that drew the attention of everyone in a pretty bad way, and it's a highly controversial moment for more ways than one, that more than 2 decades later deserves a deep dive today. Because this is the story behind the craziest controversy of Pam Oliver's career, and one of the craziest controversies, considering the circumstances, in the history of the NFL on Fox. Before I talk about the controversy in question and the outrage over this, we need some context to understand how the game itself was going, because it will help us understand why Pam Oliver said what she said. It's December 9th, 2001. It's week 13 of the NFL season, and we have an absolutely monumental game on our hands over at Lambeau Field in the NFC Central between the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. At the time, this might have been the biggest game of the season, and I do not say that lightly. Aside from the fact that the rivalry between the Packers and the Bears is arguably the greatest in football, and was full of bad blood around this time, just as it is pretty much every year, this game meant the world to both of these teams. In one corner, you had the Chicago Bears, sitting at 9-2, and sitting tied with the St. Louis Rams and the San Francisco 49ers for the best record in football, and the best record in the NFC for that matter. They've got a legitimate shot somehow at getting the #1 seed in the conference, and having the entire postseason run through Soldier Field. The problem, though, was that they had to watch their back, as despite their 9-2 record and their 3-game winning streak, they were in serious trouble when it came to winning the division. Because in the other corner, you had the Green Bay Packers, who were just 1 game behind at 8-3, and won the earlier meeting back in Week 9 by a final score of 20-12, meaning that if the Packers won this game and completed the sweep, they would own the head-to-head tiebreaker and take over the division lead heading into the final quarter of the season. If the Bears win, they maintain a hold on the best record in the conference. If they lose, they are now a wild card. If the Packers lose, their division hopes are pretty much shot barring a miracle. But if they win, oh man, they take the NFC Central crown for the time being and possibly enter the picture for the number 1 seed in the conference. As for how this game turned out, the second verse was the same as the first, because once again, the Packers won and held the Bears' offense to absolutely nothing. At Lambeau Field, the Packers completed the sweep and won this one by a final score of 17-7, never trailing at any point and leading just about wire to wire, considering the fact that they scored a touchdown on the opening drive of the game. And honestly, Chicago's defense did not play that badly. The Packers finished the season with the 5th most points in football and had an electric offense led by quarterback Brett Favre under center, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. The Bears actually held the Packers to their 3rd lowest point total of the entire season and held Favre to under 200 net passing yards, which means, as you can probably tell, the Bears, despite their great defensive effort, lost this game because of an absolutely anemic offense. Chicago's offense wasn't exactly anything to write home about all season, especially at this point in the year. Even though the Bears won their last 2 games, they did so on the strength of their defense, beating the Minnesota Vikings 13-6 in Week 11 and beating the Detroit Lions 13-10 in Week 12. Most teams lose if you only score 13, and this game against the Packers continued a brutal stretch offensively for Chicago, where they mustered up just 33 points over a 3-game stretch, or 11 points per game if you're doing the math at home. As you can tell from all these lowlights, everything about this game offensively for the Bears was ugly with a capital U. The Bears only had 189 yards of offense all game. The team went 2 for 12 on 3rd down. The team picked up just 50 rushing yards and averaged an abysmal 2.6 yards per carry. The Bears had just 11 first downs all day and did not have a single play go for at least 20 yards, which seems hard to believe when you have 87 plays on offense. Combine all of that with a team that held onto the ball for just over 23 minutes of game time, and yeah, it was not pretty. Chicago had 13 drives all game. 7 of them ended in punts, including each of their first 4 drives. At one point in the contest, the Bears had a 3-drive stretch where they mustered up just 1 yard of offense. 1 yard in 3 drives. And only twice all game did the Bears actually cross Green Bay's 30-yard line. And one of them, the only reason they did it, was because Brian Urlacher intercepted a pass late in the first half and took it down to the 17-yard line. So the offense had nothing to do with that. Again, Chicago's defense did its job, but it is a team game. And when your offense is that poor and it's unable to get anything done, you're not going to win the game. Now, there were many inept moments offensively for Chicago throughout this game, but the one that was the straw that broke the camel's back, the one that really made tensions rise, and the one that became a subject of controversy was this sequence right here. The Bears start the drive at their own 31-yard line, and on first down, they give it to Anthony Thomas down the right side for a gain of 7. All right, good start to the drive. Second down, and they once again give it to Thomas down the right side. He picks up 2 yards. Not great, but it does make it 3rd and short. And on 3rd down, they give it to Leon Johnson down the right side for no gain. The referees come out and measure the play, and unsurprisingly, it's short. Now it's 4th and 1, and the Bears decide to punt the ball away back to Green Bay, opting not to go for it despite being near midfield and despite only needing a few feet. It's a quick 3 and out, sending Chicago's defense back out onto the field after 3 straight runs to the same side of the field, whether it was to the tackle or the guard on the right side. And Chicago's defense, understandably, was livid about this. This was now the 4th straight drive ending in a punt, and they were furious with this man right here, offensive coordinator John Shute, about the unimaginative play calling, and about the overall ineffectiveness of the offense. The defense and Shoop got into a shouting match and got into a pretty heated argument, with tensions boiling over. The Bears had reached their breaking point, with the two sides shouting at each other on the sidelines, with defenders telling Shoop to call better plays and help us out, and Shoop telling the defenders to mind their business and let him do his job. That's a pretty big storyline, and it's something that an observant and good sideline reporter would report on. And sure enough, Pam Oliver did just that. And oh man, did that turn out to be a massive mistake. Because when the broadcast cut to Oliver late in the first half with about 12 seconds left, this is what Oliver said.
It'll be enough for the first down, but 12 seconds left as we check in with Pam Oliver. Pam.
All right, Dick, some of the Bears defensive personnel in agreement with Moose about the stubbornness of John Shoop. They were screaming at him to do something else, and Shoop screams at them, turns around and says, "Hey, I'm calling the plays. Calm down." Back to you.
There you have it.
All right, I know what you're probably thinking. What the heck was so controversial about that? If anything, that seemed like a great sideline report. Oliver knew that she had to be in and out during the timeout before the game resumed, so she got all of the information in there in a concise manner. She didn't stumble on any of her words, she didn't have any moments of awkward silence or any utterances, and she didn't sensationalize anything. If anything, she did a great job tying her report into previous comments made by Daryl Johnston up in the booth. This is why Pam Oliver is one of the best in the business. And like I said earlier in the video, everything that she said during this report was 100% true. Nothing was fabricated. Nothing was made up. The Bears said that's exactly what happened. Other reporters would confirm the story that there was noticeable and unavoidable tension on the sideline, and that this was what was said. Oliver did her job. As a sideline reporter, she reported on what was happening on the sidelines. So, where's the controversy? Well, she did almost too good of a job of sideline reporting. Because even though sideline reporters, with the assistance of a team's media relations aide, are allowed to freely roam the sidelines, giving them more access and the ability to do their jobs better and more accurately without being confined to a specific area, they are not allowed to report on conversations that take place in the bench area. In other words, you can report on something, but you can't report on something. As Lionel Hutz would say,
"But all I did was tell the truth."
Of course you did, but there's the truth and the truth.
As an example, if I'm a sideline reporter, and Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence are in a heated conversation about whether a hot dog is a sandwich, I'm allowed to say that Lawrence and Peterson were in a heated conversation on the sidelines. What I'm not allowed to do, however, is disclose the contents of the conversation. I can't say directly what Lawrence or Peterson said. Even if Oliver wasn't eavesdropping or trying to act secretly to get the information, seeing as this conversation was so loud that Oliver could just hear it naturally, she was not allowed to report on what exactly the player said and what Shoop said back. And when the Bears officials rewatched the broadcast after the game and heard this, and when reporters asked about the blow-up made public by this reporter right here, Pam Oliver, oh man did they throw a fit, as the team publicly complained to the league office as well as Fox Sports. Fox violated the NFL rules. Said league spokesman Greg Aiello, "The Bears have contacted us, and we're following through to ensure it doesn't happen again." It really was an issue of privacy for the players and the coaches. And head coach Dick Duran, who was one of the more open coaches in the league when it came to granting access to do interviews before kickoff and before the start of the second half, was livid about this, feeling like the team's privacy was invaded, and feeling like Pam Oliver betrayed his trust. Said Duran, "The problem is that everything that's said on the sidelines is public. There are microphones and dangling objects down on the field, and they record every single word you say, and that's difficult. Now, even though Oliver broke the rules here, Fox stood by her 100%. Said Dan Bell, a spokesman for the network, "We fully support Pam for reacting and reporting on a story any good reporter would want to have. However, the NFL has made us aware that this is a sensitive situation, and we will try to avoid a similar occurrence in the future." Translation? Pam, we've got your back all the way. You did the right thing here. You did nothing wrong. The NFL rules are bizarre when it comes to this, and we'll figure out something with how to handle something like that in the future, since this is an incredibly gray area that the league never really clarified. But you're not in trouble one bit. Keep doing what you're doing. It's almost like the kid who gets picked on in school and finally snaps and starts beating the bully up, getting punished and reprimanded by the school. Meanwhile, the parents say they're not going to punish the kid because they did the right thing. The kid stood up for himself. He did nothing wrong. That's what this was. Fox stood by the good reporting. The problem was that, in the eyes of the NFL and the Bears, it was almost too good. Yes, we want to give the fans access and information, but not that much access and information. Now, from everything that I could find, Pam Oliver did not make a public comment on this. However, for those wondering, Oliver did not get blacklisted from working any Bears games or anything like that for the rest of the season. In fact, when the Chicago Bears played the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional round of the playoffs later that year, actually 1 month later, Oliver was working on the sidelines at Soldier Field, reporting on the action in a professional manner like always. But for the game between these two teams behind me right here, yeah, that's a moment that Fox would like to forget. This is one of those incredibly gray areas where I'm very interested to see in the comments section whose side you're on. On one hand, you want players and coaches to have some privacy, and you want those sideline conversations and the contents of them to be confidential. On the other hand, they're in a public forum, and if you can hear what they're saying, you have a right to report on it. What's the point of a sideline reporter if they can't report on what's happening? Plus, the network spends so much money for the rights to broadcast the games anyways. Plus, if a fan was the one who heard the contents of this conversation because it was so loud, there's nothing stopping the fan from saying anything, so why is a reporter different if they're not eavesdropping? It's an incredibly murky area where there's not a ton of clarity in some ways. And I, for one, am glad that Fox stood by Pam Oliver here and didn't fire her for doing her job, because it's tough to imagine the NFL without her on the sidelines. But in 2001, she faced an incredibly bizarre controversy that's still remembered more than 2 decades later, where she learned a bizarre lesson. That lesson? You have to report on the games, but you can't actually report on the games. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.